The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on Amelia Bradford's back as she scrubbed the hotel floor for the third time that day, her knees aching against the rough wooden planks, while Mr. Thornton stood over her with his pocket watch in hand, counting down the seconds until he could berate her again for being too slow. It was July 1882 in Bentonville, Arkansas, and the heat had settled into every corner of the Grand Valley Hotel like an unwelcome guest that refused to leave. Amelia had been working at the establishment for nearly 2 years now, ever since her father passed away from consumption and left her alone in the world at 18. She had thought herself fortunate to secure a position as a housemaid, but that was before she truly understood what kind of man Samuel Thornton was. "Faster, Miss Bradford," Thornton snapped, his thick mustache twitching with irritation. He was a portly man in his 50s, always dressed in expensive suits that strained against his considerable girth. "We have guests arriving on the evening stage, and I will not have them seeing water spots on my floors." Amelia bit back the retort that rose to her lips. There were no water spots. She had already scrubbed this section of the lobby until her hands were raw and bleeding beneath her worn work gloves. But contradicting Mr. Thornton only made things worse. She had learned that lesson the hard way during her first month of employment, when she had dared to suggest that perhaps his standards were unreasonable. He had docked her wages for a week and added extra duties to her already overwhelming workload. "Yes, sir," she murmured, dipping her brush into the bucket and attacking the same spotless boards with renewed vigor. Thornton grunted, unconvinced, and pulled out a small leather notebook from his vest pocket. He made a great show of licking the tip of his pencil before making a notation. "That is 3 demerits for insufficient speed today, Miss Bradford. 4 more and you will forfeit this week's wages entirely." Amelia's heart sank. She was already behind on her rent for the tiny room she occupied above the seamstress shop. Mrs. Henderson had been patient, but that patience would not last forever. Without her wages, she would be out on the street with nowhere to go and no family to turn to. "I understand, sir," she said quietly, keeping her eyes fixed on the floor. "See that you do." Thornton consulted his watch again, his jowls quivering with disapproval. "You have exactly 30 minutes to finish the lobby, strip and remake all 6 guest beds, polish the brass fixtures in the dining room, and prepare afternoon tea service. Any delays will result in immediate termination." The pronouncement landed like a physical blow. What he was asking was impossible. Even if she worked at a dead run without stopping for breath, she could not possibly complete all those tasks in half an hour. The beds alone would take at least 40 minutes, and that was without the meticulous hospital corners and perfectly aligned pillows that Thornton demanded. "Mr. Thornton, please," Amelia began, finally looking up at him with desperate eyes. "That is not enough time." "Perhaps if I could have an hour. Are you contradicting me, Miss Bradford?" His face flushed an ugly shade of crimson, and his small eyes narrowed to slits. "Are you suggesting that I do not understand the requirements of my own establishment?" "No, sir. You only meant to question my judgment and argue with your employer. That constitutes insubordination, Miss Bradford, and I will not tolerate it." He made another note in his book, his pencil scratching viciously across the page. "That is 5 additional demerits, bringing your total to 8. Your wages are forfeit." Panic clawed at Amelia's throat. "But, sir, I need that money. I have rent to pay and food to buy. Please, I will work harder. I will stay late every night this week to make up for it." Thornton's expression shifted into something that made her skin crawl. It was the same look she had seen on his face before, the one that appeared when he stood too close or let his hand linger on her shoulder a moment too long. "Well now, Miss Bradford, Perhaps we can come to an arrangement." Every instinct screamed at her to back away, but she held her ground. She needed this job. She needed to survive. "What kind of arrangement, sir?" she asked, though she already dreaded the answer. He stepped closer, and she could smell the cigars and whiskey on his breath. "You are a comely young woman, Miss Bradford, 20 years old, unmarried, alone in the world. It occurs to me that someone in your position might benefit from the protection and generosity of an established gentleman." "I do not understand, sir." But she did understand. She understood perfectly, and revulsion churned in her stomach. "I think you do." His thick fingers reached out to touch a strand of her honey-colored hair that had escaped from her bun. "Accompany me to dinner this evening. Be pleasant company. Show your appreciation for my willingness to overlook your many shortcomings as an employee. Do this, and I will not only restore your wages but increase them." Amelia jerked away from his touch, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I cannot do that, Mr. Thornton. I am not that kind of woman." His expression hardened instantly, all pretense of charm evaporating. "Then you are dismissed. Collect your things and vacate the premises immediately. You cannot fire me for refusing your advances." "I am firing you for insubordination, poor performance, and chronic inability to meet the standards of this establishment," he said coldly. "If you attempt to make any other claims, I will ensure that every business owner in Bentonville and the surrounding territories knows that you are a liar and a troublemaker. You will never work in a decent establishment again." Tears of frustration and fear burned behind Amelia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall, not in front of this horrible man. "I will pack my belongings." "You have 10 minutes, Thornton said, checking his watch again. "After that, I will have the sheriff remove you for trespassing." Amelia abandoned her scrub brush and bucket, climbing to her feet on shaking legs. Her meager possessions were kept in a small storage room behind the kitchen where the staff were allowed to leave their personal items during working hours. She moved through the hotel in a daze, barely seeing the familiar corridors and rooms where she had spent so many exhausting hours. How had her life come to this? 2 years ago, she had been the cherished daughter of a respected schoolteacher. Her father had educated her himself, teaching her to read and write and cipher with the skill of any university student. He had filled her head with poetry and history, and grand ideas about justice and dignity. Then the sickness had taken him, swift and merciless, and she had discovered that all his grand ideas did not pay for food or shelter. She had tried to find work as a teacher herself, but the school board had informed her that they did not hire unmarried young women. Too distracting for the older boys, they said. She had tried the general store, the post office, the telegraph office. Every door had closed in her face. The hotel had been her last option, and now even that was gone. In the storage room, she pulled her worn carpetbag from the shelf and began stuffing it with her few possessions. 2 spare dresses, both faded and patched, a threadbare nightgown, her mother's silver hairbrush, the only piece of jewelry she owned, the leather-bound volume of Tennyson's poetry that had been her father's favorite. She wrapped the book carefully in her apron before tucking it into the bag. "Amelia." A soft voice made her turn. Constance, one of the other housemaids, stood in the doorway with wide, frightened eyes. She was only 16, a farmer's daughter trying to earn money to send home to her struggling family. "Is it true? Did Mr. Thornton really dismiss you?" "Yes." Amelia's voice came out flat and hollow. "But why? You are the best worker here, you never complain, and you always finish your tasks." "Mr. Thornton has his reasons." Amelia would not burden this sweet girl with the ugly truth. It would only put Constance in danger. If Thornton had propositioned her, he would likely do the same to others. But Amelia could not protect anyone now. She could barely protect herself. Constance twisted her apron in her hands. "What will you do? Where will you go?" "I do not know." The admission cost her dearly. "But I will manage somehow, I always do." It was a lie, and they both knew it, but Constance nodded anyway, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I will pray for you." "Thank you." Amelia hoisted the carpetbag onto her shoulder and gave the younger girl what she hoped was an encouraging smile. "Be careful, Constance. Be smart." She left through the back door, unable to face the humiliation of walking through the lobby where other staff and guests might witness her dismissal. The afternoon heat hit her like a wall, and she paused on the wooden steps to get her bearings. The hotel backed onto a dusty alley that ran between Main Street and the residential area. Wagons and horses moved along the thoroughfare, kicking up clouds of red dirt that coated everything in a fine layer of grit. Amelia knew she should go directly to Mrs. Henderson's to collect her belongings from her room, but the thought of explaining why she had lost her position was too overwhelming. Instead, she turned toward the center of town, walking without purpose or destination, simply trying to outdistance the panic that threatened to consume her. Bentonville was a modest but growing town, benefiting from its position along the road between Fayetteville and the Missouri border. Main Street boasted a general store, a bank, a telegraph office, 2 saloons, a church, a schoolhouse, and various other businesses that served the local farming community and passing travelers. Amelia had always found comfort in the orderly rows of false-fronted buildings and the friendly greetings of shopkeepers who knew her by name. But now, those familiar streets felt threatening. Everyone would soon know she had been fired. Thornton would make sure of it, probably embellishing the story to make her seem incompetent or worse. Her reputation would be destroyed, and with it, any chance of finding new employment. She was so lost in her dark thoughts that she nearly collided with a man coming out of the general store. She stumbled back with a startled cry, and strong hands caught her elbows, steadying her before she could fall. "Whoa there, miss. Are you all right?" Amelia looked up into a pair of striking blue eyes set in a sun-bronzed face. The man was tall and lean, dressed in worn denim trousers, dusty boots, and a simple cotton work shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal corded forearms. A black Stetson sat on his dark hair, and a blue bandana was tied loosely around his neck. He looked to be in his mid-20s, and there was something both gentle and competent in the way he held her, making sure she had regained her balance before releasing her. "I am fine," Amelia said quickly, stepping back and trying to compose herself. "I apologize. I was not watching where I was going. No harm done." He tipped his hat to her, a slow smile crossing his handsome features. "Though you look like you have got the weight of the world on your shoulders, if you do not mind my saying so." It was such a perfect assessment of her situation that Amelia felt her composure crack. To her horror, tears began sliding down her cheeks before she could stop them. She turned away, mortified, pressing her hands to her face. "Hey now," the man said softly. "I did not mean to upset you further." "You did not." The words came out muffled. "I am sorry. This is unseemly. I should go." "But where?" The question echoed in her mind. Where could she possibly go? "Are you in some kind of trouble, miss?" There was genuine concern in his voice, not the false concern that Mr. Thornton had affected. "Is there someone I can fetch for you? Family, maybe?" "I have no family." She forced herself to lower her hands and meet his eyes, wiping at her wet cheeks with as much dignity as she could muster. "And yes, I am in trouble, but it is not the kind that anyone can help with. I have lost my position, and I have nowhere to go and no prospects. So you see, there is nothing to be done." The man studied her for a long moment, and she saw his gaze take in her servant's dress, her worn carpetbag, her red and roughened hands. Understanding dawned in his expression, followed by something that looked like anger. "Where did you work?" he asked. "The Grand Valley Hotel, but I would prefer not to discuss it." "Samuel Thornton's place." It was not a question. The man's jaw tightened, and he glanced toward the hotel as though he could see through the buildings to the establishment 2 blocks away. "Let me guess. He made you an indecent proposal, and when you refused, he dismissed you and threatened to blacken your name if you told anyone." Amelia stared at him in shock. "How did you know?" "Because he has done it before, multiple times from what I hear. There are not many secrets in a town this size, and people talk." He shook his head in disgust. "The man is a snake, and someone should have called him out on his behavior a long time ago." "But they have not, and they will not," Amelia said bitterly. "He is a wealthy, established businessman. I am nobody, an orphaned housemaid with no connections and no resources. If it comes down to his word against mine, I will lose every time. That does not make it right. No, but it is reality nonetheless." They stood there in the dusty street, and Amelia became aware that people were starting to notice them. A young woman crying in public while talking to a strange man would attract exactly the kind of attention she could not afford right now. "I should go," she said again, though she still had no destination in mind. "Wait." The man seemed to be wrestling with some internal decision. Finally, he said, "My name is Vincent Parker. I work at the Triple Bar Ranch about 5 miles west of town. We are always looking for help, especially now during the summer season. The owner's wife, Mrs. McCarthy, she runs the household and could probably use someone with your skills. If you are willing to work hard, you would have a place to stay and regular wages." Hope flickered in Amelia's chest, fragile and tentative. "Do you truly mean that, or are you simply being kind?" "I mean it." Vincent's expression was sincere. "I would not offer if I did not. Mrs. McCarthy is a good woman, fair and decent. She will not mistreat you or make demands you cannot meet, and the ranch is far enough from town that Thornton's poison will not reach you there." "I do not know what to say." Amelia felt dizzy with the sudden reversal of fortune. "Why would you help me? You do not even know me." "Let us just say I have a strong dislike for men who abuse their power," Vincent said. "And besides, you look like someone who could use a friend right about now." A friend? When was the last time she had been able to call anyone a friend? Constance, perhaps, but their relationship had been constrained by the walls of the hotel and the watchful eye of their employer. This man, this stranger, was offering her not just employment but genuine kindness. "My name is Amelia Bradford," she said, extending her hand in a gesture her father had taught her. "And yes, I would very much like to accept your offer, Mr. Parker." He took her hand, his grip warm and firm. "Call me Vincent. And you can call me a whole lot worse than that if this does not work out, but I have a feeling it will." They shook on it, and Amelia felt some of the terrible weight lift from her shoulders. She was not out of danger yet. She still had to collect her belongings, explain to Mrs. Henderson, and hope that this opportunity at the Triple Bar Ranch was everything Vincent promised. But for the first time since Mr. Thornton had made his vile proposition, she felt like she could breathe again. "When can we leave?" she asked. Vincent glanced at the sun, calculating the time. "I've got my horse tied up at the saloon. I was planning to head back within the hour, but if you need more time to settle your affairs in town—" "No." Amelia shook her head firmly. "I have nothing to settle. Everything I own is in this bag. The sooner I can leave Bentonville, the better." He studied her again, and she saw compassion in his eyes. "All right, then. Let me finish loading my supplies and we will ride out. Do you know how to ride?" "Not particularly well," she admitted. My father kept a small mare, but I only rode her a few times before we had to sell her. That is all right. My horse is steady. You can ride behind me. 20 minutes later, Amelia found herself seated behind Vincent on a sturdy bay gelding named Buck, her carpet bag secured to the saddle along with Vincent's supplies from the general store. She had never ridden double before, and she was acutely aware of how close she had to sit, her arms wrapped around Vincent's waist to keep from falling off. "You all right back there?" Vincent asked as they left the town limits and headed west along a well-worn road. "Yes," Amelia said, though her heart was racing. Everything had happened so fast. An hour ago she had been scrubbing floors and fearing for her future. Now she was riding off into the countryside with a man she had just met, trusting him to deliver her to safety. It was either the bravest or most foolish thing she had ever done, and she honestly could not tell which. The landscape opened up around them, rolling hills covered in oak and hickory trees giving way to cleared farmland and pastures. The heat was still oppressive, but at least on horseback there was a breeze. Amelia tried to focus on the beauty of her surroundings rather than her worries. Wild flowers bloomed along the roadside in splashes of yellow and purple. Birds sang from the fence posts. In the distance, she could see cattle grazing, their reddish-brown hides bright against the green grass. "How long have you worked at the Triple Bar?" she asked, partly out of curiosity and partly to fill the silence. "About 3 years now," Vincent answered. "I came down from Missouri looking for work. Started as a general ranch hand, but I have worked my way up to lead wrangler. I am responsible for training the horses and managing the remuda." "You must be good at what you do." "I like to think so. Horses make more sense to me than most people." He glanced back at her with a grin. Present company accepted, of course. Amelia found herself smiling despite everything. Of course. They rode in companionable silence for a while, and Amelia allowed herself to relax slightly. Vincent seemed to be a skilled rider, guiding Buck with easy confidence over the uneven terrain. And he had not done or said anything inappropriate. In fact, he seemed to go out of his way to be respectful, making sure she was comfortable and not pushing her for information about her situation beyond what she had already shared. "What about you?" Vincent asked eventually. "Have you always lived in Bentonville, all my life?" "My father was the schoolteacher here for nearly 15 years. He died 2 years ago, and I have been working at the hotel ever since." "I am sorry about your father. That must have been hard." It was. Amelia swallowed against the familiar ache of loss. "He was all I had. My mother died when I was very young. I barely remember her." "So you have been alone for a while now." "Yes, though I suppose I will not be any more if this position at the ranch works out." "It will work out," Vincent said with conviction. "I will make sure of it." His confidence was reassuring, even if Amelia could not quite bring herself to share it yet. She had learned the hard way that nothing in life was guaranteed, but she wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that somewhere in this harsh, uncertain world, there was a place where she could work and be treated with dignity, and perhaps even find something resembling peace. The ranch came into view as they crested a gentle hill. The Triple Bar spread across a shallow valley, a collection of buildings arranged around a central yard. The main house was a sprawling structure of wood and stone with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. Several barns and outbuildings stood nearby, along with corrals and fenced pastures that stretched toward the hills. Men were working near one of the barns, and the sound of hammering rang across the distance. "Welcome to the Triple Bar," Vincent said, and Amelia could hear the pride in his voice. As they rode down into the yard, people began to notice them. A few of the ranch hands stopped their work to stare, clearly curious about the woman riding behind their lead wrangler. Vincent ignored them, guiding Buck toward the main house and dismounting with fluid grace. He turned to help Amelia down, his hands firm on her waist as she slid from the saddle. Her legs were shaky from the unfamiliar position, and she stumbled slightly. Vincent steadied her again, just as he had in town. "Thank you," she murmured. "Wait here," he said. "I will go fetch Mrs. McCarthy." He strode up the porch steps and disappeared into the house, leaving Amelia standing awkwardly in the yard with her carpetbag clutched in both hands. The ranch hands had gone back to their work, but she could feel their surreptitious glances. She kept her chin up and her expression calm, refusing to show how nervous she felt. A few minutes later, Vincent emerged from the house with a woman in her 40s following him. Mrs. McCarthy was handsome rather than pretty, with dark hair streaked with silver and keen gray eyes that assessed Amelia in a single sweeping glance. She was dressed practically in a simple calico dress and apron, her hands' work worn like Amelia's own. "So you are the young lady Vincent tells me about," Mrs. McCarthy said, her voice brisk but not unkind. "He says you are looking for work and that you have been badly used by Samuel Thornton." Amelia shot a glance at Vincent, who gave her an encouraging nod. Apparently, he had not wasted any time explaining the situation. "Yes, madam," Amelia said. "I am willing to work hard at whatever tasks you need done. I can clean, cook, do laundry, mend clothing, tend gardens. I am also educated and can read, write, and do figures." Mrs. McCarthy's eyebrows rose. "Educated, are you? That is unusual for a housemaid. My father was a teacher. He believed girls should have the same education as boys. A forward-thinking man, I like that." Mrs. McCarthy circled around Amelia slowly, taking in every detail. "Vincent vouches for your character, and I trust his judgment. He is a good man and a good judge of people, but I need to know what happened at Thornton's hotel. The truth of it." Amelia took a deep breath. She had hoped to avoid this conversation, but she supposed it was only fair. Mrs. McCarthy was taking a risk by hiring someone who had been dismissed from their previous position. "Mr. Thornton made inappropriate advances," she said, keeping her voice steady. "He suggested that if I were to become his mistress, he would increase my wages and overlook what he claimed were deficiencies in my work. When I refused, he dismissed me and threatened to ruin my reputation if I told anyone what he had done." "That bastard," Mrs. McCarthy said flatly. "Pardon my language, but the man is a scourge on decent society. This is not the first time I have heard such stories about him." "That is what Vincent said. Vincent is right, and he was also right to bring you here." Mrs. McCarthy's expression softened. "I can use someone with your skills, Miss Bradford. My husband and I run this ranch with 25 men, and the household work is more than I can manage alone. I have been making do with help from a couple of the ranch hands' wives, but they have their own families to tend to. If you are willing to work as my assistant, I can offer you room and board plus $20 a month. The work will be hard but fair. I will not ask anything of you that I would not do myself, and I will treat you with the respect you deserve. $20 a month." That was $5 more than Thornton had been paying her, even before he started docking her wages. And room and board meant she would not have to worry about rent or food. It was more than she had dared to hope for. "I accept," Amelia said quickly, before Mrs. McCarthy could change her mind. "And thank you, madam. You will not regret this." "I do not think I will." Mrs. McCarthy smiled for the first time, transforming her stern features into something warm and welcoming. "Come along, then. I will show you where you will be staying and get you settled. We keep late hours during the summer, so there will be plenty of time for you to learn your duties. Supper is at 7, and I expect everyone to be punctual." Amelia grabbed her carpetbag and followed Mrs. McCarthy toward the house, pausing only to glance back at Vincent. He was still standing by his horse, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. He tipped his hat to her, that same slow smile crossing his face. "Welcome home." The words struck something deep in Amelia's chest, an emotion she had not felt since before her father died. Hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change for the better. Mrs. McCarthy led her through the house, pointing out various rooms as they went. The interior was comfortable without being fancy, furnished with sturdy handmade pieces, and decorated with personal touches that spoke of a family home rather than a showpiece. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, with a massive cast-iron stove and a long wooden table where the ranch hands took their meals. Amelia could smell something delicious cooking, and her stomach rumbled in response. She had not eaten since breakfast, and that had only been a piece of dry bread. "You are probably starving," Mrs. McCarthy said, noticing. "We will get some food in you after I show you your room." They climbed a narrow staircase to the second floor, where a hallway lined with doors branched off in both directions. Mrs. McCarthy opened one of the doors to reveal a small but clean room with a single bed, a washstand, a chest of drawers, and a window that looked out over the ranch yard. "It is not much," Mrs. McCarthy said, "but it is yours. You will not have to share it with anyone, and you can lock the door if you want privacy. All I ask is that you keep it tidy." Amelia set her carpetbag on the bed, hardly believing her good fortune. At Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, she had shared a tiny attic room with two other working girls, and there had been no lock on the door. The cramped storage space where she had kept her things at the hotel did not even bear thinking about. "This is wonderful," she said sincerely. "Thank you, Mrs. McCarthy." "Call me Margaret when it is just us," the older woman said. "Save the formality for when Mr. McCarthy is around. He is a good man, but he likes things proper." "I will remember that." "Good. Now come along and let us get some food in you. Then I will show you the rest of the house and explain your duties." The next few hours passed in a blur of information and activity. Margaret was a patient teacher, explaining the routine of the household and showing Amelia where everything was kept. The work would indeed be demanding, but it was manageable, especially compared to the impossible standards Mr. Thornton had set. Amelia would be responsible for helping with meals, cleaning the main living areas, doing laundry, and tending the vegetable garden behind the house. Margaret handled most of the cooking and oversaw the running of the household, but she made it clear that she considered Amelia a partner rather than a servant. "We work together here," Margaret explained as they prepared supper together that evening. "I do not believe in lording over people just because I have a position of authority. We are all doing our part to keep this ranch running, and every job is important." It was such a stark contrast to Mr. Thornton's philosophy that Amelia almost wanted to cry with relief. Instead, she threw herself into her work, determined to prove that Vincent's faith in her had not been misplaced. At 7 o'clock sharp, the ranch hands began filing into the kitchen for supper. They were a varied group, ranging in age from teenage boys to grizzled older men who had been working ranches all their lives. They were polite to Amelia, tipping their hats and murmuring greetings, though she could see the curiosity in their eyes. New faces were apparently uncommon at the Triple Bar. Vincent came in with a group of 3 other men, all of them dusty and tired from a day's work. He had cleaned up somewhat, washing the worst of the dirt from his hands and face, but his clothes were still stained with sweat and grime. When he saw Amelia helping Margaret set out platters of fried chicken, biscuits, and greens, his face lit up. "Settling in all right?" he asked, pausing beside her. "Yes, very well. Thank you again for bringing me here." "No thanks necessary. I am just glad it worked out." One of the other men, a burly fellow with a thick red beard, elbowed Vincent in the ribs. "Going to introduce us to the lady, Vince. Amelia, this is Jack Harrison, Pete Williams, and Tom Sullivan," Vincent said, gesturing to each man in turn. "Gentlemen, this is Miss Amelia Bradford. She is Mrs. McCarthy's new assistant, so I expect you all to be on your best behavior." "We are always on our best behavior," Jack protested, though his grin suggested otherwise. "That is a damned lie, and you know it," Pete said, laughing. The easy camaraderie among the men was infectious, and Amelia found herself smiling despite her exhaustion. This was so different from the tense, oppressive atmosphere at the hotel. Here, people seemed to actually enjoy each other's company. Mr. McCarthy arrived just as everyone was sitting down to eat. He was a tall, spare man in his 50s with a weathered face and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Margaret introduced Amelia, and he gave her a brief nod of acknowledgement before taking his seat at the head of the table. "Welcome to the Triple Bar, Miss Bradford," he said. "My wife tells me you come highly recommended." "I hope to prove worthy of that recommendation, sir," Amelia replied. "I am sure you will." The meal was lively and loud, with multiple conversations happening at once and good-natured ribbing flying back and forth across the table. Amelia ate quietly, content to observe and learn the dynamics of this new place. She noticed that Vincent seemed well-liked among the men, often at the center of jokes and stories. He had an easy laugh and a quick wit, and it was clear that he was confident in his place here. Several times during the meal, she caught him glancing at her, and each time their eyes met, he would smile before turning his attention back to his plate. Amelia felt a strange flutter in her chest each time it happened, a sensation she did not quite know what to do with. She barely knew this man. He had helped her in her moment of desperation, yes, but that did not mean anything beyond simple human kindness. Did it? After supper, the men dispersed to their own quarters or to finish evening chores. Amelia helped Margaret clean up the kitchen, washing dishes and wiping down the long table. By the time they finished, full darkness had fallen, and Amelia could barely keep her eyes open. "You have done well today," Margaret said, patting her shoulder. "Go on up to bed. Tomorrow we'll come early." "What time should I wake?" 5 o'clock. "We start breakfast at 6 for the early shift." 5 o'clock. That was even earlier than the hotel, but somehow Amelia did not mind. She climbed the stairs to her little room, changed into her nightgown, and collapsed onto the bed. The mattress was thin and the pillow lumpy, but it was hers. Her own space, her own bed, her own door that she could lock. She fell asleep within minutes, more content than she had been in 2 long years. The next week settled into a routine that Amelia found surprisingly satisfying. She woke before dawn each day to help Margaret prepare breakfast for the ranch hands. After the morning meal, she would clean the kitchen and then move on to other household tasks. Laundry on Mondays, mending on Tuesdays, deep cleaning on Wednesdays, baking on Thursdays, and general maintenance on Fridays. Saturdays were for tending the garden and preparing for Sunday, which was a day of rest as much as ranch work allowed. The labor was hard and the hours long, but Amelia threw herself into it with determination. She wanted to prove to Margaret, to Vincent, to herself that she was capable and valuable. And unlike at the hotel, her efforts were noticed and appreciated. Margaret often complimented her work, and Mr. McCarthy, though taciturn by nature, occasionally offered a gruff word of approval. But it was Vincent's attention that Amelia found herself most aware of, though she tried not to think too hard about why that was. He had a habit of finding reasons to be near the house during the day, stopping by the kitchen for water or to deliver a message to Mr. McCarthy, always taking a moment to chat with her if she was there. Their conversations were easy and comfortable, ranging from trivial observations about the weather to more substantial discussions about books they had read or places they hoped to see someday. "You ever think about leaving Arkansas?" Vincent asked one afternoon as Amelia was hanging laundry on the line behind the house. He had appeared seemingly from nowhere, offering to help her carry the heavy basket of wet sheets. "Sometimes," Amelia admitted, pinning a pillowcase to the line. "My father used to tell me stories about other places. San Francisco, New Orleans, even New York City. They sounded so exciting and full of possibilities." "But," Vincent prompted, handing her another wet sheet, "but they also sounded frightening." "I have never been more than 10 miles from Bentonville. The idea of going somewhere completely unknown is both thrilling and terrifying." "I understand that. I felt the same way when I left Missouri, but I am glad I did it. Staying in one place because you are afraid to leave is no way to live." "Is that why you left? Because you were afraid of staying?" Vincent was quiet for a moment, and Amelia worried she had overstepped. But then he said, "My father wanted me to take over his farm. It was a good farm, productive land, and he had built it up from nothing over 30 years. But I could not see myself doing that for the rest of my life. Plowing the same fields, planting the same crops, following the same routines year after year. It felt like a prison, even though I knew I was lucky to have that option." "What did your father say when you told him you wanted to leave?" "He said I was an ungrateful fool who did not appreciate what he had given me." Vincent's voice was carefully neutral, but Amelia heard the pain beneath it. "We did not part on good terms. I have not spoken to him since." "I am sorry. That must be difficult." "It is what it is. I made my choice, and I stand by it. But sometimes I wonder if there was a way to make him understand that leaving did not mean I did not value what he had done. It just meant I needed to find my own path." Amelia understood that sentiment all too well. Her father had wanted her to marry and settle down with a respectable local man, to have the security of a husband and family. But Amelia had wanted more, though she had never been quite sure what that more entailed. Then her father died, and all those vague dreams had evaporated in the harsh reality of survival. "Maybe someday you can reconcile with him," she said gently. "People can change. Hurt can heal. Maybe." Vincent did not sound convinced, but he smiled at her anyway. "You are an optimist, Amelia Bradford. I try to be. The alternative is too depressing." They finished hanging the laundry together, and Vincent lingered even after the work was done, leaning against the fence post and watching her with an expression that made her feel warm and flustered. "What?" she finally asked, self-conscious. "Just thinking that this place is better with you in it," he said simply. Before Amelia could formulate a response, Jack's voice bellowed from one of the corrals. "Vince, need you over here. This colt is being a son of a gun," Vincent sighed. "Duty calls." "But I meant what I said." He tipped his hat and strode away, leaving Amelia standing by the clothesline with her heart doing strange acrobatic flips in her chest. It was dangerous to read too much into his words. Vincent was kind to everyone. That was simply who he was. But she could not deny that she looked forward to their encounters more than was probably wise. As the weeks turned into a month and then 2, Amelia found herself increasingly drawn to Vincent Parker. It was not just his good looks, though she would have to be blind not to notice those. It was the way he treated people with respect regardless of their station. The way he was endlessly patient with the young horses he trained, never losing his temper even when they were stubborn or skittish. The way he made her laugh with his dry observations about ranch life. The way he seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions, as though what she had to say actually mattered. She tried to keep her feelings in check. She was still finding her footing at the Triple Bar, still rebuilding her life after the disaster with Mr. Thornton. The last thing she needed was to complicate matters by developing romantic feelings for a man who probably saw her as nothing more than a friend. But her heart, it seemed, had ideas of its own. One evening in late September, after the supper dishes had been washed and put away, Amelia stepped out onto the front porch to enjoy the cooler air. The days were still warm, but the evenings had begun to take on the crispness of approaching autumn. She settled into one of the rocking chairs and allowed herself a moment of stillness, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Mind if I join you?" She looked up to find Vincent standing at the bottom of the porch steps, his hat in his hands. In the twilight, his features were softened, making him look younger and more vulnerable than usual. "Not at all," Amelia said, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. Vincent climbed the steps and sat down, stretching his long legs out in front of him. For a while they rocked in companionable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. Cattle lowing in the distance, crickets chirping in the grass, the soft nicker of horses in the barn. "I have been thinking," Vincent said eventually. "About what? About you." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "About how glad I am that I ran into you that day in town. About how this place feels different now, better, and I think it is because you are here." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. "Vincent, let me finish," he said gently. "I know I have got no right to say any of this. You have been through a terrible ordeal, and you are just starting to get back on your feet. The last thing you probably need is some cowboy telling you he has feelings for you. But I cannot keep quiet anymore, Amelia. I care about you. More than I should, probably, considering we have only known each other a few months. But there it is." Her heart was hammering so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "I care about you too," she whispered. Vincent's eyes widened. "You do?" "Yes. I have tried not to, because I thought it would only lead to heartache. But I cannot seem to help myself. You are always so kind, so decent. Being around you makes me happy in a way I have not been happy in a very long time." A slow, wonderful smile spread across Vincent's face. "Well then, I guess the question is, what do we do about it?" "I do not know," Amelia admitted. "I have never done this before. Courtship and romance were not exactly encouraged when I was working at the hotel, and before that I was too busy caring for my father to think about such things." "I do not have a lot of experience either," Vincent confessed. "Ranch work does not leave much time for socializing, but I figure if we are both willing, we can figure it out together. Take things slow, see where this goes." "I would like that." Amelia felt like she was glowing from the inside out. "I would like that very much." Vincent reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm and strong. They sat like that for a long time, holding hands and watching the stars, not needing to say anything more. Words seemed inadequate to capture what was happening between them, this fragile and precious thing that was just beginning to take shape. From that night on, their relationship deepened and grew. They continued to be careful, mindful of propriety and their positions at the ranch. But they found moments to be together. Stolen hours in the evening after work was done, or quiet conversations during meal preparations when the kitchen was otherwise empty. Vincent told her more about his life in Missouri, his complicated relationship with his father, his dreams of someday owning his own ranch. Amelia shared memories of her father, the loneliness of the past 2 years, the terror she had felt when Mr. Thornton had made his demands. I wish I could go back and punch him in his smug face, Vincent said fiercely when she told him more details about her final day at the hotel. Violence would not solve anything, Amelia said, though she appreciated the sentiment. Besides, the best revenge is living well. I am happy here, Vincent. Happier than I have been since my father died. That is worth more than any amount of vengeance. You are probably right, but I still want to punch him. Margaret noticed the growing attachment between them, of course. She was far too observant not to. One afternoon, while they were working in the garden together, she said casually, "Vincent is a good man, one of the best I have known." Amelia felt her cheeks heat. Yes, he is. He has had a difficult time of it, despite his cheerful demeanor. His father rejected him for wanting to live his own life. That kind of wound runs deep. He told me about that. Then he trusts you. Vincent does not open up to many people. Margaret pulled a weed and tossed it into the bucket between them. I am telling you this because I see the way you two look at each other, and I want you to know that you have my approval, for whatever that is worth. You are both adults and capable of making your own decisions, but if you need someone to talk to or advice, I am here. Thank you, Margaret. That means a great deal to me. Just promise me one thing. What is that? If he asks you to marry him, make him do it properly, on one knee with a ring and everything. Do not let him get away with some casual proposal while you are mucking out the chicken coop. Amelia laughed, startled by the frank talk. I will keep that in mind. Marriage. The word sent a thrill through her. It seemed impossibly distant and yet tantalizingly close at the same time. She and Vincent had only been courting for a few weeks. Surely it was far too soon to think about marriage. And yet she could not help imagining it, building a life with this man who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect, creating a home and family together. Autumn deepened into winter, and the ranch settled into the slower rhythms of the cold season. The cattle were brought down from the high pastures, and much of the work shifted to maintenance and preparation for the spring calving season. Amelia and Vincent's relationship continued to grow, each day bringing new discoveries and deeper intimacy. They had not yet kissed, beyond a chaste brush of lips after Vincent had walked her back to the house one evening, but the tension between them was palpable, an electric current that seemed to hum whenever they were near each other. In mid-December, a cold snap brought the first snow of the season. Amelia woke one morning to find the world transformed, everything covered in a pristine blanket of white. She stood at her window, marveling at the beauty of it, when a snowball hit the glass with a soft thump. She opened the window and leaned out to find Vincent standing in the yard below, his arms full of snow and a mischievous grin on his face. "Come down here," he called. "You cannot stay cooped up inside on a day like this. I have work to do. It can wait. Come on, Amelia." When was the last time you played in the snow? She could not remember. Probably not since she was a child. The idea was absurd and frivolous and utterly appealing. "Give me 5 minutes." She dressed quickly in her warmest clothes and ran downstairs, grabbing her coat and scarf from the hook by the door. Margaret looked up from the bread dough she was kneading, eyebrows raised. "Vincent wants to play in the snow," Amelia explained breathlessly. "Then you had better go before he gets impatient and throws snowballs at the kitchen window too," Margaret said with a smile. "Go on. Have fun. We can manage without you for an hour." Amelia burst out of the house and was immediately hit in the shoulder with a perfectly aimed snowball. She shrieked and ducked, scooping up a handful of snow to retaliate. What followed was a glorious, chaotic snowball fight that left them both soaked and laughing, collapsed side by side in a snow drift. "I cannot believe I let you talk me into this," Amelia gasped, still giggling. "I am going to be frozen solid. Worth it though, right?" Vincent turned his head to look at her, snowflakes caught in his dark hair and eyelashes. Yes, she admitted. Definitely worth it. He reached over and brushed a clump of snow from her cheek, his touch gentle despite his cold fingers. The laughter faded, replaced by something more intense. Vincent leaned closer and Amelia's breath caught. "Can I kiss you?" he asked quietly. "Really kiss you, I mean." "Yes," she whispered. His lips met hers, cold at first from the snow but warming quickly. The kiss was tender and searching, a question and an answer all at once. Amelia felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, every nerve in her body singing with sensation. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard, clouds of vapor mingling in the frigid air. "I love you," Vincent said, the words tumbling out as though he could not hold them back any longer. "I know it is too soon, and you probably think I am crazy, but I love you, Amelia. I think I have loved you since the moment I caught you from falling in front of the general store." Tears pricked at Amelia's eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you too. I was so afraid to say it, afraid I was reading too much into everything. But I do, Vincent. I love you so much it scares me. Do not be scared." He cupped her face in his hands, his expression fierce and tender at once. "I am not going anywhere. I am not going to leave you or hurt you or make demands you cannot meet. I am going to love you for as long as you will let me." She kissed him again, pouring all her emotion into it, trying to convey without words what she felt. When they finally got up and went back inside, both shivering and soaked to the skin, Amelia felt like she was walking on air. Margaret took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly, shooing them off to change into dry clothes before they caught their death. That evening, Vincent asked to speak with Mr. McCarthy privately. Amelia tried not to eavesdrop, but the house was not that large, and she could hear the murmur of male voices from behind the closed study door. When they emerged 20 minutes later, Mr. McCarthy looked thoughtful and Vincent looked nervous but determined. "Miss Bradford," Mr. McCarthy said formally, "I would like a word with you as well, if you please." Amelia's stomach flipped. Had she done something wrong? Was Vincent in trouble? She followed him back into the study, where he settled behind his desk and gestured for her to take a seat. "Vincent has just asked my permission to court you with the intention of marriage," Mr. McCarthy said without preamble. "He assures me that you return his affections and that this is what you want. Is that true?" "Yes, sir," Amelia said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "It is what I want very much." "I see." Mr. McCarthy steepled his fingers, studying her. "You have been with us for nearly 5 months now, Miss Bradford. In that time, you have proven yourself to be a diligent, honest, and capable worker. My wife speaks very highly of you, and I have seen no reason to doubt her judgment. However, marriage is a serious matter, especially when both parties are employed at the same establishment. If things were to go badly between you, it could create difficulties." "I understand, sir." "That said," Mr. McCarthy continued, "I have also had the opportunity to observe Vincent Parker for 3 years. He is one of the finest men I have employed, and I trust him implicitly. If he believes you are the woman he wants to spend his life with, then I am inclined to support that decision." Relief flooded through Amelia. "Thank you, sir. That means a great deal. You should know that if you marry, you will no longer be able to work as Mrs. McCarthy's assistant. It would not be proper. However, as Vincent's wife, you would be entitled to accommodations in one of the family cottages we maintain for married hands, and I would see about finding other appropriate work for you if you wish to continue contributing to the household." "I would like that very much, sir." "Good. Then you have my blessing for whatever that is worth." Mr. McCarthy's stern expression softened slightly. "You have been through a great deal, Miss Bradford. I am glad you have found happiness here with us." "Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. I am glad too." She left the study to find Vincent waiting anxiously in the hallway. As soon as he saw her face, he broke into a wide grin. He said yes. He said yes. Amelia laughed, feeling giddy with joy. He gave us his blessing. Vincent swept her up in his arms, spinning her around despite the narrow confines of the hallway. When he set her down, they were both laughing, and Amelia felt tears streaming down her face again. "I do not have a ring yet," Vincent said, suddenly serious. "I need to save up enough to buy something worthy of you. But I promise you, Amelia Bradford, I will marry you as soon as I can, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes." "I could never regret it," she said, touching his face. "You saved me, Vincent. In every way that matters, you saved me." "You saved me too," he said quietly. "I just did not realize how lonely I was until you came along." They stood there in the hallway, holding each other, and Amelia marveled at how completely her life had changed in just 5 short months. She had gone from desperation and despair to love and hope. The future, which had once seemed so bleak and uncertain, now stretched before her full of promise. The weeks leading up to Christmas were some of the happiest of Amelia's life. She and Vincent were openly courting now, with the full knowledge and approval of the McCarthys and the ranch hands. The men teased Vincent mercilessly, of course, but it was all good-natured, and Amelia could tell they were genuinely happy for him. Several of the married hands took Vincent aside to offer advice, and Amelia heard fragments of their conversations that made her blush and laugh at the same time. Vincent was as good as his word about the ring. He saved every spare penny from his wages, and in early January he rode into town and came back with a simple gold band set with a small but beautifully cut diamond. It was not extravagant, but to Amelia it was the most precious thing in the world. He proposed properly, just as Margaret had insisted he should. He took Amelia for a walk one Sunday afternoon, leading her to a spot on the ranch that overlooked the valley. The winter sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and the bare trees cast long shadows across the frozen ground. "Amelia," Vincent said, taking both her hands in his, "when I met you 6 months ago, I was just going through the motions of life. Working hard, doing my job, but not really living. You changed all that. You brought color and warmth and meaning back into my world. You made me remember what it feels like to hope for something more." He dropped to one knee, pulling the ring from his pocket. "I know I am just a cowboy without much to offer, but I love you with everything I am, and I promise to spend the rest of my days proving that to you. Will you marry me, Amelia? Will you be my wife?" "Yes," Amelia said through happy tears. "Yes, Vincent, I will marry you, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her. Then he stood and kissed her, a kiss full of promise and passion, and the knowledge that they were embarking on a new journey together. They set the wedding date for early March, after the worst of winter had passed, but before the busy spring season began. Margaret threw herself into preparations with enthusiasm, enlisting Amelia's help to sew a wedding dress from a bolt of cream-colored silk that Mr. McCarthy purchased from a traveling merchant. It was the most beautiful garment Amelia had ever owned, simple but elegant, with long sleeves and a fitted bodice that flared into a modest train. As the wedding day approached, Amelia found herself thinking often about her father. She wished desperately that he could be there to walk her down the aisle, to meet Vincent and see that she had found a good man who would care for her. But she tried to focus on the joy of the moment rather than the sorrow of what she had lost. Her father would have wanted her to be happy, and she was happy, more than she had ever thought possible. The wedding took place in the small church in Bentonville on a bright morning in early March. It was Amelia's first time back in town since the day Vincent had brought her to the ranch, and she felt a flutter of nervousness as they rode in. But Vincent held her hand tightly, and Margaret Ann,